We are Lima Charlie. We are live. It is time for another.
There's too
Black
many
Tower
fucking
podcast.
vertical lines in that.
You're too many vertical.
Right?
Stigmatisms are fucking with me. Like, you know how hard it was for me to find the S? I'm like, what? It looks like literally it's just like thieves. Anyway.
Yep.
Speaking of things
There's
that have
one
too many vertical
squiggly
lines
line in with the straight ones.
Speaking of
There's
things that have too many vertical lines, have a squiggly line in with the straight ones, and just don't fucking look right. Welcome to another episode of the Black Tower Podcast. We are a Wheel of Time podcast where we have all the squiggly lines, we have all the straight lines, and we have all the in-between lines, and all are welcome at our tower. I am one of your hosts, your Bajan Mahil, Andrew. I do the battles and things. I can't say stabby stab. That's not us.
Yeah, that's threefold talk.
I do the
they
pokey
will
poke.
stabby stab.
I do the
you.
hokey pokey. There we go.
Oh,
That's just me, like going through the battlefield, doing the hokey pokey, people dying around me. That's exactly my combat style.
that's gonna be the next weave we discuss at one of our live streams.
Yeah. You should really see me turn myself about at Demise Wells. Shit's nuts.
You know, if you're thinking that life is complicated, and if you're thinking that it is too much to handle, and that there's too much going on, just think about it. The hokey pokey really is all it's all about. Don't worry about anything else. Just do the hokey pokey, turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
What it's all about. And on that note, I introduce myself to you. I am Josh. I am the Sorovan Mahale. I call the lightning, the thunderbolts and lightning. It is very, very frightening.
Galileo.
The dichotomy of man, the hokey pokey song in Bohemian Rhapsody. The duality of man condensed at the Black Tower.
Beelzebub does have a devil put aside for me.
Oh. And I am Daniel, your
right hand
Amin
in and
Khan
take my right
Mahale.
hand out.
I'm the one who sings all of the songs. The dichotomy between the hokey pokey and the Bohemian Rhapsody. And Dance with Jack in the Shadows. Because nothing's ever complete until you're dancing with Jack in the Shadows.
That's true.
And as stated, we are the Black Tower. Well, we are the Mahales from the Black Tower podcast. And tonight we are joined by someone very special. We have someone as a guest for our topic tonight who is very fun and very cool and very enjoyable to speak to in person, which I don't know if are you coming to WatCon this
I
year?
can't make WatCon, but I saw
Understood.
all of you at JordanCon. So
Indeed, yes. So we did just see you. I was just wondering whether we would see
More
you
proof
again.
that I was there. I was there. For a
It is
limited
true.
run only, I was there.
Indeed. But we'll go ahead and give Village Mattress a little bit of time to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and where the people can find you.
well, my name is Chris. I am Village Mattress because that's the name of my business. And people can find me villagemattress.net. Also, you can find me on Discord. And then every now and then I get to be a guest on fine shows like this. So that's where you can generally find me. I'm always in the chats
Fine
around
shows.
different shows. Dusty Wheel and Way of the Leaf and Threefold Talk, and of course Black Tower Podcast are probably my favorite ones that I check in on. So amongst others, but yeah, and then I'm busy with selling furniture and mattresses and fireworks. So just got back from a visit to Charleston and got to look at the Rigney files, which was very interesting. So
Ooh.
I had a really good time there. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
I don't
Indeed.
think
Well, thank
changing
you
the
for
layout
being
will
here.
actually change
Yeah.
anything in editing. But Josh, let me know because I'm curious.
That will actually not do anything in editing.
I didn't think
I will
so.
have to do that manually. But for patrons who are listening live, they will get to see that, as well as Village Mattress. If he says something offensive, we can give him the Dragon's Fang.
That is true.
And only people watching live will be able to see that.
That's fair. All right. So thank you, Village Mattress, for being here. Also, thank you very much for telling us where we can find you. Definitely go check out Village Mattress's store. There are lots and lots of really good, awesome things that you can buy from there. Do you ship nationwide or is it local?
A lot of products I can, and some products I cannot. So it
Understood.
depends. It depends.
Perfect.
But like Tempur-Pedic mattresses, I can ship nationwide. I have a vendor, Maloof, that does a lot of things for bedroom that I can ship nationwide. Sheets,
Nice.
different things. Some things can go into Canada as well. I'm
Ooh,
currently
nice.
shipping a mattress to Colorado. And then actually somebody from the community is in touch with me right now about a mattress. So yeah. So
Heck yeah.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
everybody
There'll be
keep
someone
that
else
up.
in the relatively near future because the mattress I have now I've had since 2016 when I was a much skinnier man.
Indeed. So definitely go check out Village Mattress. And while you are there, also make sure to go ahead and check out blacktowerpod.com. That is your one-stop shop for all of the information about the Black Tower podcast. It also now has some information about this year's Gathering Madness, which is going to be held in Utah at Evermore Park. Which is very, very exciting for us. It's the first time that we'll actually be sort of on site at something. We've definitely tried to do a couple of outings at other Gathering Madnesses.
Normally,
One
that
year we
results in,
did
like, criminal
axe
charges of,
throwing.
like public indecency, but
Madness Eye?
it's the wrong kind of outing, I guess.
Indeed. We definitely did a couple of things. The last time we were in Utah,
Ashimon Flash.
we did a couple of fun events in Josh's backyard. And then we went to North
You
Carolina.
might actually
and
have to censor that one. You might.
It's really
weird.
throwing things.
Trollic nipples.
Jesus Christ, you guys.
Star pasties.
Just make them like
But-
little narc heads.
But yeah, definitely everyone, please
I'll
consider
put the
coming to the
Trollic
gathering.
nipples over them. Sorry. Anyway,
But are we talking like episode 1 or episode 8? Like we
Those
getting
are
high def, or we
distinctly
getting-
different Trollic.
Better effects in episode 1.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We getting Beltane
Yeah.
nipples or Harwin's Gap?
definitely. Beltane nipples are
Beltane.
more festive.
That is true. Beltane nipples are absolutely more festive.
Kevin
Around
is
Christmas,
the,
you can hang a little mistletoe off of them.
yeah, Kevin is the resident nipple expert, Trollic nipple expert. So, Kevin, shoot us a comment below and tell us which nipple is best nipple.
But anyway, you know where there won't be any Trollics, hopefully, unless they figure out how to use the ways again. The Gathering Madness.
It's the best Gathering Madness ever.
Shunk. Tom?
Daniel,
Tom?
are you okay? What's wrong?
But yes, please definitely consider coming out to the Gathering Madness this year. It's going to be a lot of fun, which, if we're being completely honest, we think it's actually been pretty fun every year to varying degrees. This year, A, does not look like it's going to be an exception, and B, we're actually doing something very different. So come join us at Evermore Park. They are actually possibly interested in doing more with us. And so it will be a really, really good opportunity to get our feedback for the park as well as other people's feedback. So if you are anywhere near Utah, or really Salt Lake City, because Utah's a big state. If you are anywhere near Salt Lake City, definitely consider coming down to the Gathering Madness and checking things out and having a good time with us. And we'd also love to hear your feedback as far as how it goes this year and how the place is and all of that different stuff. So we'd love to see you there. Always a good time, and we love to see your faces. So now that
like Utah's a big state, all I could think of was like Crocodile Dundee, like looking at Delaware and be like, that's not a state. Hold up, Utah. That's a state.
Oh, and speaking of Trolloc nipples, you know where should get a database of Trolloc nipples? The Great Blight.
Echo from somewhere.
That absolutely seems like a great place to have a database of Trolloc nipples. You could call it Wiki Troll.
Okay, I don't hear it anymore. Oh, nope, there it is. I don't know where it's coming from.
I think it'll be fine. It's not very loud.
Why is it only on
I'm not
YouTube?
editing. It's not my problem.
Right? Anyway,
Anyway,
but the Great Blight, thegreatblight.com. It's a great resource for the Wheel of Time, set up by
They don't
Nameless
call
and
it the
team.
subpar blight. They call it the Great Blight.
That is
because
true.
It's great.
Because it's great. It's
the
actually
greatest
really awesome
blight
for finding.
ever.
We will admit that it has not actually been updated in a little while, and so it may be a little older than we all would like it to be. But then again, we would all like it to be updated every second of every day, so maybe we're also unrealistic. But it is a great resource for going ahead and finding lots of content creators. As Village Mattress said, there are a number of really great content channels, whether it be YouTube, artists, podcasts, merch stores, different things like that. And you can find a heck of a lot of them on thegreatblight.com. It also is a great resource for a spoiler-free wiki. It's very, very cool. You can look by book and presumably, I'm guessing later on, by episode of the TV show to make sure that you don't get anything that you don't want to see. So if there's a person later on in the story who dies horribly, you aren't going to know that if you just look them up on, book 5. Or if you don't want to know whether they die horribly because they survive later, but you want them dead, you don't need to go ahead and see that, and you can hope for their death all the way up till the end. All of that good stuff. So you won't be spoiled by things. If you're only on Fires of Heaven, you can look up to only Fires of Heaven and make sure that you don't get anything from book 6 and on. So very good resource and very, very fun. Now, speaking of spoilers,
before we tell you what we're talking about tonight, that joke will make more sense after the spoiler warning, because I can't tell you why that's a good play on words yet, because that would be a spoiler.
Indeed.
Here is today's spoiler warning, courtesy of our very own fact checker, Mahale. Given the business to a certain Mahale.
He always
Welcome
does.
to the Black Tower, a Wheel of Time podcast. All right, let's check here. Okay. This podcast episode will be spoiling books 1 through... let's be honest here. Whatever Josh lets slip. So how about you pull that spoiler condom all the way on? Anyway, quit your whining. The last book came out in 2012. He was actually a ghost, and Rosebud was the name of his sled for creator's sake.
Yeah, Josh.
That's a Citizen Kane reference, by the way, which came out way, way before 2012. So you have no excuses when that one comes.
My favorite
Citizen
part
what?
about that is that when we go back in time to the first time I was on the show, I had a big old long speech about the gray man, not the gray man, the gray man. And when he killed Tylan, and I was like, yeah, I remember when he killed Tylan and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, no, that's the next book. And I was like, oh, right.
Yep.
The gold
My
one?
bad.
I remember.
What was the one where we had...
Yeah, the Golem.
But yes.
I kept
What
wanting
was
to
the
say
one we had
Rome.
somebody on that was
Yeah.
a first-time reader. Was it Ali? And we one of us was talking. We actually we didn't really spoil her, but we didn't know we didn't spoil her until like after we said it because like they had read it somewhere. And it was
Yeah,
one of the-
Yes.
like, all of
That
their,
was
I think
Allie.
it was Allie.
It was
Yeah.
absolutely Allie.
It was like the one time, like it was a pretty decent spoiler. It was like, you know, the whole like almost like Thailand level kind of spoiler.
Mhm.
But
Well,
we were
I mean,
fortunate
I think it
they
was
had already
actually
been
bigger
spoiled.
than Thailand because, like, when it comes right down to
yeah.
it, Thailand's not a big plot point. I mean, I'm not saying she isn't important in terms of the let's go ahead and talk about how gross this is and like make sure everybody knows that. But like, she's not a huge plot point of the story. So like, if you spoil Thailand's death, it's not as bad as like spoiling like Egwene's death or something.
Yeah.
Queen
Also, we
dies?
did the
What?
spoiler condom, so there you go. If you're still here, that's on you.
The only thing about Thailand, she's like an anchor to Matt for 2 books.
That is true. No, you're
That's true.
absolutely right. And so she is.
She's a good
important.
supporting character.
Yes, she's a very good supporting character, but it's not like a major character death,
Or-
and it happens
or-
halfway through the books. So it's not like, you know, last battle deaths or like right before the last battle or anything. Like it's a midpoint. Where again,
One might
don't
even
spoil
say
things
she's
like that.
a
Please do me a favor and
background
don't
character.
don't spoil things like that for readers who aren't there yet. But if you do, there are so many worse things to spoil. So don't, but also maybe you're okay.
Speaking of, let's go ahead and talk about the Midas Redemption arc Draco Malfoy of the Wheel of Time, who was originally known
Oh, dude!
as Tell Janine Alienstar,
Now wait.
ALLINSAR.
Now pause. Who knows who that is?
Aline
Before
Star.
we say what their famous name is, who knows what that is? Leave a comment
I would
below if you
hope-
know what that is.
Yeah. Pause
I know
it,
what it is.
comment below, and then you can come back and edit and say, yes, I was right.
I love how
I said Alien
Matt
Star. I
just
put like
were
an extra T in there.
E-
Or not an extra T. I put
Elenzar?
AT.
Elenzar.
Aliensar. Something like
Whatever.
whatever.
Janine.
I think it's
Elenzar.
probably Aelinzar because the Aelfin are also
Ooh.
pronounced that way and spelled that way.
Ooh.
So I think it's Aelinstar. Tell
Yeah.
Janine
Aelinsar.
Aelinsar.
There's no
Aelinsar,
T.
no T.
It
Yeah,
probably was.
Aelinsar.
Probably was Aliensar.
But
Not
yeah.
anymore.
Who freaking knows? Because
No.
Who
So
frickin'
I love this guy. I love this guy. He's one of my favorite Forsaken.
we meet him and we know him in the books as Sammael, the fucker with the flag with the bees.
Yes.
Or like
fucker with the flag
first,
with
like
the
for like the
bees.
first half of the series. Yeah. But he's got an interesting history. And before we hop into it, what are since you're our guest today, their Village Mattress, what are like kind of like some of the things about Sammael that maybe like stood out to you or that like you immediately think of whenever it comes to Sammael? It could be like in his history, it could be like stuff that you see in the books, whatever. What do you think about Sammael in general?
Just that he is kind of the one who set up the whole Shido plot line with Perrin, but with the Narbaha, the full boxes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's one of my favorite plot points with him.
Oh yeah. So I mean, he sends the Shido everywhere. He sends some that are undermanned that get killed immediately. Scatters all the septs so they have to gather them in, and just really creates chaos for a number of books just by that one thing. Splitting them up and sending them all over the Randland, and so that's the thing that stands out to me. On top of the fact that Rand really plots and plots for multiple books how he's going to take him down. And then, unfortunately, I think that the whole thing at Shadar Logoth is rather anticlimactic. It could have been a different ending, but it was what it was. So, and then you're like, was he really killed? Wasn't he killed?
Right.
Didn't really see him die. So,
Indeed.
But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Sammael, and I looked in the notes, and I had my companion there, and basically everything in the companion and in the big white book was the same wording that I found in the notes, just subtly different, but it was the same content. So I was looking for another
light art.
Yeah, I was looking for other little kernels there, but couldn't find anything to bring.
Big
So
white
You wouldn't
book
find him
of
because
bad
he was a
art.
general.
I know.
Can't find
That's
kernels
the
where that
joke,
was a
Josh.
general.
yeah.
Oh,
It's
So
one of the
actually,
things-
if you had just looked down on the notes a little bit more, he's just not very tall. So you just have to go look a little bit lower in the notes, and that.
He's slightly above
No.
average height.
I know that's the joke.
They say he's 6 foot, and
I
I'm
know!
5'9". I'm 5'9", so
Let's just correct
you gotta
Daniel
look
all
way
night.
down for me, I guess.
No, that's the joke. Okay, seriously, guys, we're just gonna start with this. This man is so Napoleonic complex. It's not even funny. And again, the parallel is so accurate because again, one of the things that we know from history is that people call it a Napoleonic complex. Napoleon was an inch taller than average for his time. So there is no such thing as a Napoleonic complex in terms of Napoleon was actually short. Now, again, he may have considered himself short. He may have tried to compensate for considering himself short. But that's literally why this is such a great parallel, because Sammael is 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
Even in Randland, that's not short. And
No.
this guy judges himself by Demandred and Ravine and Lews Therin his entire life because he feels like he's shorter than them. And he might be right, but he's still tall.
Yeah. It's funny. Well, Robert Jordan made all of his characters, for the most part, really tall. Except for Davram Bashir is the only one who's like short.
Indeed.
That's a good point.
Well,
So,
actually,
There's
I feel like-
so
yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew.
So one of the things I like the most, or I find most interesting about Sammael's history, is he was an athlete essentially that answered the call to war. He was a master archer. He was a world champion of. It's only known as a bloodless sword sport, but it kind of sounds like fencing to a degree. Where. It's really elegant,
Kendo or something.
hoity-toity, fancy, highbrow, high-class kind of stuff. And he carried his abilities and his athleticism over into the War of Power or the War Against the Shadow, fighting for the side of the light. And it wasn't until the War of Power that he even found out that he could channel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, Lews Therin or any of the other Aes Sedai that have been, channeling for years and years and years now. It's like, oh, there's a big war. I'm going to fight. It reminds me of like the kind of small town high school football team that's got a scholarship to go play for the college. And it's like almost guaranteed NFL draft player. They're the next prodigy. And like, something happens in their country and they say, no, I'm not doing this. I'm joining the army and I'm going to go fight. So Sammael figures out his ability to channel and clearly has a fair proclivity for it, but also gets a really big trial by fire. Because he has about 4 years where he's fighting for the side of the light, where he's picking up as much as he can. He's fighting as much as he can. And he's definitely doing this from an observational point because, one, everybody else is so busy fighting. You can't devote time to sit there and just train.
Mm-hmm.
But as one of the generals of the light, he's very much focused in on defensive tactics, which was incredibly useful because for the vast majority, aka entirety of the war, the side of the light was on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were not winning. Like no, not even close.
Yeah, they were pressed pretty hard.
Yeah, and we've talked about somebody else who forsake the light because of jealousy. Sammael has done the same thing.
2 other people.
Yeah, 2 other people that have done it.
It's a trope.
Oh yeah. So he believes himself to be a superior general. So whenever complete and total command of the Force of the Light was given over to the dragon, he said, "This is some bullshit. I'm a better general. Hey, Grendel, or whatever Grendal's name was actually at the time. It wasn't Grendal. Forgot what it was. Let's go. He's just switching sides. And Grendal and Sammael or
Camaril Meridim Nindar.
There we go. Tell and Camaril say fuck it, and they go skipping off through a gap in some mountains into a spooky magic mountain with teeth for a cave.
He
assuming
didn't,
that's what it
he
looked
didn't
like.
just leave either though. He did the whole I'm gonna pull the pin on this grenade, throw it in this room, and close the door as I walk out. Because it says here he left the gates of Hevan open and led the shadow into a battle, and it was disastrous. Like the forces of the light were absolutely decimated. So he didn't just this is bullshit, I'm going to change sides. He went, this is bullshit, I'm going to change sides, and I'm going to kick your asses on the way out or on the way back.
Yep.
Whatever it was, but it was just,
there's a lot of very distinct parallels between Wheel of Time and many world religions. And given Robert Jordan's upbringing, the area he grew up in and everything, there's definitely some similarities between the Wheel of Time and Christianity. And this one has always been one that stuck out very, very starkly for me. Because in the Wheel of Time, we have Sammael, and in the Bible, we have Sammael. It's just literally take one M out, and you have the biblical archangel Sammael, and in Hebrew, Sammael, or Sammael, or however you say it, because I don't speak
Sammael.
Translates into venom or poison of God. And as an archangel in both Talmudic and post-Talmudic lore, he was basically the accuser or adversary, seducer and destroyer, Masahit, as mentioned in the book of Exodus. A lot of what Sammael did mimics the Christian notions of Satan, to the point of being sometimes identified as a fallen angel. But ultimately he's not, because ultimately his functions result in the destruction of sinners, and it's like doing evil for the sake of good, kind of thing, which always works out well in all of human history.
Interesting thing. So we talked about the 100 Companions. We did that episode with the 100 Companions. And we talked about how Lews Therin had originally
the 113
acquiesced to the decision of the council or the whatever governing body, and said, okay, fine. Well, then the city fell, thus losing the keys to the Choden Call. And Lews Therin was like, we can't wait anymore. We can't use the Choden Call because the keys are lost to us. For all intents and purposes, they are lost. Sammael is the one who captured the city where the Choden Call keys were being constructed. Now, he didn't know they were there, obviously, or else this story would have a very different outcome.
Well, I'm actually interested in that in some ways. So we actually, I don't know if you actually saw our episode on the Choden Call keys and whatnot, but we sort of were talking about how it was in our talk about the sort of the Tamerlane and Lews Therin, and them fighting in you see this argument in episode 8 of the Wheel of Time show. It's also talked about in the book series and things like that. And it was in one of our episodes of Lews Therin gets a bad rap, and it's not necessarily warranted. I mean, plenty of things are his fault. He is absolutely the decider, and so you can lay a lot of blame at his feet for when things go wrong, because he is the general in charge of all of the armies of the light. But there's also a lot of stuff that like other people kind of force onto him and whatnot that he just takes credit for because he's the Dragon Reborn and the general of all of the forces of the light. And
So
this
in a
is
lot
actually,
of ways, he's a scapegoat.
yeah. I mean, he has a lot of power,
Right.
but at the same time, it's again, it's the thanks Obama. It's
Yeah.
like when you trip and
Yeah.
stub your toe,
Well,
that's
I don't think he
obviously
was-
not the president's fault. But
No.
again, you say
I don't think he
thanks,
was at the
Obama,
start
'cause
of that
that's-
discussion.
What?
I don't think he was. I don't think he was like the pure and total commander of the Force of the Light at the time that discussion was initially happening, because it's 4 years into the War of Power that Lews Therin takes
Right.
over as the pure and total like commander of the Force of the Light.
That's correct. But I mean, he is the
Oh, I
Dragon
think that
Reborn
happened
before
earlier.
that.
Well, he's just the
So it's
dragon.
not like he doesn't have
He's the
any
first one.
power. Yeah. It's just that he doesn't actually have 100% control until later.
Yeah.
But anyway, all of this to say that we actually read parts of the story again that we hadn't read in a while, and we discovered that, you know, the Chodan Call was being made, and he was like, hey, we need to go attack the Dark One, and people were like, no, we need to finish the Chodan Call so that we can fight him better, and Lews Therin was like, all right, fine, I'll wait until you're done with the Chodan Call keys. And then the Chodan Call keys get lost, and he's like, cool, so back to my plan of attacking the Dark One, right? And they go, no, we have to do this. And so during this, it's an interesting thing because Sammael is clearly jealous. That's sort of what seems to be the thing that pushes him over the edge to going ahead and joining the Dark One. But it also seems to be a trope in the Wheel of Time of Ishamael and a number of other people also go over because they kind of view this as hopeless. The War of the Light is not going well. They're losing at more like at turn after turn after turn. And some of them are seeing that as a challenge, but some of them are seeing that as a look, the Shadow only has to win once kind of thing. And they're like teed up to go ahead and do that. And a lot of them don't know that these like mega powerful things are even being constructed so that they can take on the Dark One and the forces of the Shadow. And so my posit here, and I wonder if you have any thoughts about this as someone that we haven't talked about this with, is do you think Sammael actually would have gone over to the Shadow just out of jealousy of Lews Therin Telamon if he had actually been given the information that this tool was being created that would have allowed them to fight back? Or was it a combination of both jealousy and hopelessness that actually sent him and a number of other people over to the Dark One?
I think it's a combination because from what I've read, it was both that he felt like the Dark One was going to be the winning side.
Mm-hmm.
And he was jealous of Lews Therin because he wasn't the one named commander in that fourth year of the war. So it was probably all of those combined that caused him to switch sides. But I don't know about the Chodan Call knowledge. And you said if he was the one who took the city where the keys were, where the access keys were, that would have been after he'd already turned. That the access keys were not available if he was in control of that city.
Correct.
So he would have already flipped. Now, my question is, we know there were 2 female keys for sure because they both show up in the book. So there should have been 2 sets of keys for the male side. And then the other question I have is the Chodan Call were in Tremal King and in Karian. Were they originally constructed in the same place and during the breaking they broke apart to different parts of the world? Or were they in 2 cities that were controlled by the forces of the light, but separate cities?
I would actually posit 6 of one, half dozen in the other, that they probably were actually being constructed in 2 different places, because it does feel like worst case scenario, you can still use one if the other one gets lost. But to your point, I mean, the one in Karian is fully buried.
Yeah.
And they're trying to archaeologically dig it out effectively by the time that we see Rand show up to Karian in the first place. And so I actually completely think that the truth is that they were probably closer together and that the breaking buried the male one and shifted the location of the female one. And whether it was in Kyrian and in Tremalking, I think they were probably closer together, but at the very least, the Earth swallowed the one in Kyrian, which is
and the
a pretty
Tremalking one was
strong...
just the hand in the globe sticking
Correct.
out.
Yeah,
that was all.
exactly.
So it was
it
mainly
also
buried
seems
too.
to be mostly buried as well. Yeah.
So no,
Interesting.
but yeah,
No, I love that thought. That's great.
yeah.
One of the things that I find interesting, little just kind of like a real life cultural parallel here, is that Sammael preferred battle to administration. Like, he was a great general, a great commander, and loved to be in the battle, but was not great at like supply chain, logistics, you know, the other, you know, quartermastering, the other things that need to go along with leadership. So as a result,
he was good with that for his soldiers, but he wasn't for the citizenship. So he took very good care of his soldiers, but then the citizens would suffer, which would make everything ultimately suffer.
Yes.
And there is actually a culture like this on Earth, like as we know it today.
The United States Army.
No.
Oh, wait. Sorry.
Wait,
sorry.
Did they recently go knock on a neighbor's door and ask for more than a cup of sugar?
Yes, that one.
I'll say recently,
no,
for the last year.
Yes.
So the military city-state of Sparta was like this. If you were a Spartan citizen and a member of the, you know, military, which essentially all male citizens of Sparta were, then you were in the military. That was your job. You woke up, you went to PT, you drilled battle formations. That was it. That was what you did for a living every day.
More soldiers than you.
I was literally about to say that.
Yes. If every single man in the country is a soldier who is farming, who is administrating, now that's not to say the women could not have done it, but once again,
like Rosie,
Spartan citizens had responsibilities. Even the women had responsibilities. Women were landowners, women were estate holders, women had a lot of these kinds of responsibilities as well.
Well,
so
and older men as well. Once you sort of not washed out of the army, but aged out of the army. There we go. Once you aged out of the army, then you were assigned a number of these things
and survived battle.
Yeah,
if you managed to survive, yeah. But the thing being is that they literally had a slave class
that is true,
that ran everything for them. But Sparta was so prosperous and so big that it literally just deflated on itself. Because the system was unsustainable.
It's the company that grows too many chains to actually it's Subway. And when you go ahead and put subways on every block in a 45-mile radius in a city, suddenly not all of your subways are doing very well, and you have to close a few because that's not sustainable.
I was talking with a buddy today, and this is going to kind of hurt the soul of Josh and I a little bit because of the sphere we work in as relatively reliant on the DoD contractors. One of the biggest failings of Sparta was as the practice of, tossing the sickly and the not perfectly formed children off the cliff, and making everybody a soldier and waging these continuous wars and being the city state that many of their neighbors called on to come to their aid, until eventually going into a conquerorship. They hired mercenaries to make up the bulk of their military there, especially towards the end, which made the Spartan military machine absolutely reliant on outsiders with no loyalty to Sparta and all the loyalty to gold. And it was a massive vulnerability, and Sparta learned far too late they could not fully function as this monolithic military entity without these mercenaries. And the second the mercenaries turned on them or got bought by or paid and hired by other city states, they were screwed. And I liken that to the current situation because I absolutely love my job. I don't want anything to happen in my job. But the United States military is very, very reliant on contractors.
Outside contractors. Yeah.
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 Understandably so, to a degree.
Well,
You know,
and
I'm a little
again,
50-50 on it. But, you know, on one hand, I like getting a paycheck. On the other hand, I'm like,
Well, and the thing that probably doesn't give you much faith is that the contractor that gets it's the one that got the lowest bid.
mhm.
It's like if you buy something on Amazon that says military grade, and people are like, oh, this must be great. Like, no, it's what
No.
meets the minimum specs for the cheapest price.
The lowest graded
That's
product
right.
at the minimum bid is what's going to get.
But
the
it
contract.
looks
It's literally like
scary.
made in China with lead paint,
Yeah.
military grade.
Right.
Like right there.
Yes. Well,
So
and again, I mean, that also,
Sammael was made with lead paint.
right?
That's why
No,
Superman can't
no.
see through his underwear.
Sammael was military grade.
the
The Trollocs
Narbaja,
were made with lead paint.
Narbaja was lead paint.
Yeah, there you go.
Did you or a loved
but
one come down with
I-
heavy metal poisoning because of your Hobaha? I can't even
All
say the
right,
word.
so we usually end up doing this way too late in the episode, which is totally fine and not a problem. We have lots of good conversations, and I don't want them to stop. But we are.
Are you
I'm
going to
do
speed run the history of Sammael?
I'm going to speed run the history. I'm going to do the thing that I like to do.
It's
where
time for a Daniel speed run.
So I'm going to just take a moment, and we are going to, we've gotten our first impressions of Sammael. We've talked a little bit about the parallels. Now we're just going to sort of run real quick through the events of the books. And this is actually not even going to be that hard because Sammael is not actually that imperative in the books. I mean, he is as a threat, as a thing that Rand plans for, all of that different stuff. Sammael is big. But at the same time, the actual page time that he gets is not huge. So we're just going to sort of run through his status and his activities during the books. So when he goes ahead and gets released from the boar, if you will, from the Dark One's prison, he almost immediately goes to Ilion and takes control of the city there as Lord Brend, taking over the Council of Nine.
So quick
He
question.
goes and he
Sorry.
go.
Literally just made me think about. Do you think he went for Ilion first because he was so jealous of Lews Therin he wanted to take over the city that sounded the most like Ileana?
Oh, Ilion!
Yes. Yes. That is now
That's
canon. Yes. Slanger.
All right then. So yeah, he
Seal it with a
basically
tape.
takes over Ilion. He makes a foothold. Moraine seems to actually know that he's in Ilion from halfway through book 2. And she basically tells Rand from the point that she realizes that he's there that he needs to go take care of Sammael. And Rand goes, later, for books and books. He ends up presumably sending a number of dark hounds to catch the Emmonsfield Five and whatnot at some point, and Lan is actually noticeably shaken at some point, which is scary because Lan doesn't do that. Anyway, he goes ahead and takes over Ilion, starts setting up things all over the place to find Angreal and Sangreal. Partially, I think maybe because he found out later that the Chodan Call were basically within his grasp, and he doesn't want that to happen again.
Imagine finding that out.
Right. He apparently also tricks Grendel into revealing where Masana is, but doesn't end up going ahead and really doing anything with that. Then he goes ahead and is approached as in disguise by Savannah and the Shido, and tricks all of them into dispersing their army with the traveling boxes, which are all just horseshit and hilarious. But it's one of my favorite things that he does to the Shido, because fuck the Shido. But he scatters them to the four winds, and as Village actually, as Chris said earlier in the thing, I mean, sets up the whole Perrin arc, which means that I hate Sammael with a fiery flaming passion. And then eventually, after lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of planning, Rand sets Matt with a very large army to go and attack Ilion. But it's all just a disguise or a distraction. And he just pops into the city with a much smaller force and chases Sammael around Ilion for just a short amount of time until Sammael retreats to Shadar Logoth, which was always his sort of retreat plan, to which Rand follows him. Yeah, doesn't make any sense. Then Rand follows him, and one of his Fardar is my
Leah.
Yeah, Leah. She's one of the Aiel maidens, and
she was actually one that
Shadow.
Yeah, she got left.
Got left in
Last time they were in Shadow
Logoth when he
Logoth.
went to the Waygate with Elder
That's
Hamlet.
right. Yes.
She got
So
left.
she ends up
She
getting
was
left
lost,
behind.
and they looked for her forever, and then they left her, and they thought she was dead.
She must be going.
And so he shows up in Shadow Logoth, searching
she
for
was not
Sammael. Rand has a weird run-in with Moradin where they cross the streams, and then he finds Leia just.
That's why everybody should watch Ghostbusters.
Right, just before she gets touched by Mashadar. And then he balefires her so that she doesn't actually have to die the horrible, agonizing death of Mashadar, and then sees Sammael on a balcony and swings this giant balefire bar up to Sammael. And we never actually know whether he gets him with balefire or Mashadar gets him instead. But either way, Sammael's fucked. Goodbye, Sammael. Have a nice day.
The companion says Mashadar got him.
Yeah, well, the companion also says Bella's alive.
It's
We all know that's
And
some
the companion
horse
is right.
shit.
Well, Bella's the
some
creator.
Bella shit.
You know, I don't have many plans of visiting Seattle, Daniel, outside of the Gathering Madness. But you do live very close to a rum bar, and I'm willing to buy enough drinks for you to forget that trash opinion.
Yep, that's never gonna happen.
Bella-
I will be unconscious before I say
Bella
that
and Mandarb live happily
I'm
ever
sorry,
after
they
and have beautiful,
don't.
beautiful
Look.
children. And I will
Y'all,
not let you take this from me.
In
Bella
Mount
is the creator.
Yes.
Well, if Bella's the creator, then she doesn't need Mandarb to have children.
No, but she
No, but it makes it a lot
goes and
easier.
has
with
children with
Mandarb.
Mandarb because even the creator likes to get some.
All right, Zeus, how about you chill?
My point exactly.
Actually, I think in this situation, like the creator would be more like Loki. Or no, not
Does
Loki, the horse. but
Loki
Loki.
fuck a lot of stuff?
No,
Loki
Loki
fucks a horse.
fucks everything.
Does he?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't remember
oh,
that
yeah.
being a
Yeah.
big thing.
Yeah, Loki turns
It's
into
not, it's not a big
female
thing in the
horse.
Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in actual mythos,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know that those
your
are
boy
different,
Loki
but-
fucks.
As a matter of fact, Odin's eight-legged horse Sleipnir is Loki's child.
Is that the one where he fucks
Loki-
the horse? And
Loki is
Yeah.
Sleipnir's mother.
yeah,
Loki carried and birthed Sleipnir. Like, yeah, no, Loki fucks
shit's
Like-
wild.
everything. Everything.
Speaking of wild,
Everything.
Chris, I want to hear what you think about the.
I mean, to
the
be
life
fair,
and
he is
times.
also the Norman Gander's dad as well,
He's a lot of things.
And Fenrir.
and
Most
Fenrir.
of the
you're right.
and Agraboda. Most
Pick-
of the
pick
monsters.
about a third of the problems that they have to deal with in Viking mythos, and Loki is either friends with, mom of, or dad of, or brother of, something like that. Anyway,
Fair enough. All right, sorry,
given
Chris.
given
go
the
ahead and
history
give
that we
thoughts.
see both on and off paper for Sammael, talk to us a little bit. I don't want to guide your thoughts in any one specific.
Well-
Sammael.
Most of Sammael's time in the books, he's with Grendel.
Mhm.
You know, anytime he shows up, it's usually Grendel's there. So obviously, you know, they were working together. And, you know, she, to a certain extent, she was gathering information on him, obviously, but she wasn't really working with anybody else. She was kind of doing her own thing, but she's the only one who had any tabs on what he was doing. I mean, we don't see him with anybody else. And he kind of backed him. He kind of backed himself into a corner. I mean, made himself well known as Lord Brand. He was obvious. There was a Forsaken in charge. He mangled things in Ilion with the citizens, and that's why Rand was offered the Crown of Swords, because he fed them via Tyr the whole time, even though they were mortal enemies. Rand was sending grain to Tyr, so they offered him the Crown of Swords. So, he bungled a lot of things, but he was, kind of a Lord of Chaos with what he did with the Shido and the things that he did.
I know that reference.
Yeah. So I think he created a lot of chaos, and he did things that the Dark One would have wanted him to do. It was just kind of, like I said, kind of an anticlimactic ending for him with Mashadar taking him down. But, you would have thought that because he was so good being a defensive general, he would have picked a better place to retreat to.
Or that was a perfect place to retreat to, because who in their right mind would follow him? Oh, right, nobody. And the people who did follow him were absolutely not in their right mind.
Well,
You see, I have a massive issue with the title and accolades that Sammael is given, and then the conduct and actions we see from Sammael. Because he's known as, like, historically, oh, you were this great general, and he didn't even learn to use the one power until, like, the War of Power, and then he fought for us for 4 years, and then, like, depending on whether you go by the big white book of bad art, or if you go by the Shadow Rising timeline, he either fought for the Shadow for 6 years, or he fought for the Shadow for like 46 years ish, depending on which one you go with. Given the way he acts, I would more so go with Robert Jordan's statement from the Word of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, that it was only about 10 years. With the fair thing that maybe, like, it was only fought in earnest the last 10 years. His biggest accomplishment was leaving the gates open to a city so the defenses could be literally just walked around, in a city that was completely off guard, not prepared, not on guard, not looking for an attack at all. Not even just like, oh, somebody might come to the city. They didn't notice that the gates were fucking open. They didn't notice that one of the notable figures just fucked off. Like, it'd be like Tom Brady just walking out of the middle of the Super Bowl and everybody being like, I don't care. Which some people don't. Some people do. He's still the GOAT. He's got rings. It is what it is.
Whether or not you like him, facts are facts.
Yeah.
yeah.
But he does that.
Sure, let's go.
And then he leads an army, and he's not that far behind him. Not that far behind him is Demendrad and his portion of the Shadow's army, and someone else. Who was the other one that Balal? Demendrad and Balal weren't too far behind Sammael as he took over where the Chodan Call were. And even then, he didn't know where the Chodan Call access keys were. Even then, he didn't know what he did. Nobody did, except for the light. And they were like, oh, we're going to shit a brick over it. And like the one secret they managed to keep actually saved them. But
wouldn't you?
I mean, no, I would.
Okay, good.
I would say I would, but the number of times that the Air Force has lost nuclear weapons or erroneously shipped them makes me wonder about how many times we shit a brick when we should have.
Broken Arrow.
Or we didn't shit a brick when we should have. But that's when they're taken, not when they're lost. When they're taken.
Well, in the movie, it was lost.
That was a good movie, though.
It was a good movie.
Anyway, but when we see Sammael like back out in the world, and he's supposed to be like this great general who went from like the success story of going from athlete to general for the light, and then great general for the shadow. A lot of what he does seems more like high school bully tactics. He sends the dogs to chase Rand. He wants to destroy Rand's reputation, so he disperses the Shido. He spreads a couple lies. He hangs out with his BFF out behind the cafeteria smoking doobies, Grendel. Like, whenever it comes to like the things we've seen other individuals do that have lived far less time as well than Sammael has. To call him any sort of great general seems like the most unreliable narrator, greatest exaggeration of someone from the Age of Legends. It's like all the other Forsaken are really great at what they do. Here's 2 cool stories about him. He must be just as great as the rest of them. And in reality, he's like 3rd string wide receiver.
Well, since war was new to all of them, maybe they all sucked as generals. And you didn't have to
He
be
was
that
just
good
The best
to
of
be
the
the
worst.
best of the worst, and then war has been introduced, and
Okay.
there's been Trolloc Wars and all that,
That's a
and
fair
generalship
point.
gets better and better and better.
So let's think about
comparing him
this,
to
though.
Roldo Altorado, he's horrible.
It does
Let's-
make him not seem as bad. So, okay.
Let's think about this, though.
Like a bunch of
And
toddlers.
many
in a
of you
playpen
probably
throwing
know
plastic
that
balls at each other.
football, American football, originated at, I don't know specifically at West Point Academy, but originated as a military exercise in which 2 teams would scrimmage. The quote unquote general or coach would give them a battle plan. They would execute that battle plan, and whoever got the ball to the end zone was considered to be the superior tactician.
I'm pretty sure it's volleyball. I've seen the newest Maverick movie. I'm pretty sure it's volleyball.
That's Navy. Okay, just that, so that doesn't count.
Oh, that's how the Navy started their fight.
Yeah, that's how the Navy. Yeah. So,
There's
but
jokes
the
I
thing
want
is,
to make. I'm not going to make. Not going to.
what do we say? What do we say about Sammael? He was an athlete. He was a gifted, talented pro athlete. Maybe this is Robert Jordan, and let's put a real world filter on this. Robert Jordan went to Vietnam. He had to deal with officers who were competent, officers who were not as competent.
He also went to school at the Citadel, which is another
He
military
also
academy.
went to the school at Citadel. And so he has direct experience with people who are like this. Now, Sammael is an example of a person who is very, very good at one thing. And that one thing is specifically tactics on the battlefield. But even then, his calling card, or his flavor, if you will, is 100% like overly complicated, overly complex, overly inflated. I'm playing 15-dimensional chess with 500 characters, and I am
More like
Sammael, and you will fucking die before me. And he's actually a very dangerous opponent because you don't know the depth of the intricacy of his plans. Are his plans overly intricate? Sure. I would 100% agree with that, which is why Rand in kind responded with almost an overly intricate battle plan, which he got Matt and the Band of the Red Hand to start marching towards Ilion as a complete and total red herring. And then eventually he showed up with like a contingent of maidens and like just had kind of a battle with it, and it was a completely different battle than what Sammael was expecting. It worked, it was good, but Sammael still had plans within plans within plans. And as we said, he retreated to Shedar Logoth, and my thinking there is that he built that plan because he thought nobody would go there, because that would be insane to go there. So that's the perfect place to go. So when we're talking about the character of Sammael, this very much speaks to me as those officers that you serve under, that they go, well, actually, if we do this, then we do this, and then we do this, and if this guy does this, and if that guy does that, and if this guy does that, and we're going, what are you talking about, man? Just tell me what I need to do. Like, I'm just going to go over here and do the thing. Okay. Like, I really don't care about the 200 people involved in this grand plan. And then in the meantime, you've got the people that he's supposed to be leading or ruling over going, please, sir, can I have some more porridge? And it's just not, he as a leader, he fails. As a general and tactician, he's tedious but effective. His move to come to the Shido and say, "Ah, yes, I have this for you," and spread them across the continent was absolutely genius, because what he's done now is he's created essentially a series of speed bumps across the entire world that serves no purpose but to weaken the forces of the light and further divide them. And it's like he has these moments of tremendous brilliance, and I would argue that even his dumber moments are not necessarily dumb calls. It's just that he made a call as a general or a coach, and the competing general or coach picked his play. And it doesn't matter how brilliant your play is. If someone picks your play, you're going to look like a fool because the other guy got lucky. And what do we know about Rand? He's Therin. He has
to be
the
lucky than
ultimate brand of luck.
Well, when you're domino level luck.
Well,
Exactly.
Mac
How do you
domino
fight someone
level
like
luck.
that?
Rand is domino halved luck.
He's
he
either
gets
full domino or no
screwed.
domino.
I don't know, because again, he definitely gets like the sea folk on board with his plan, but also loses his hand. Like there are competing lucks going on
Hey,
here.
that wasn't
Like,
the sea folks' fault. That was, you don't mix business and pleasure. You don't bring your wife to the big military strategy meeting. All right.
yeah, not when it's Grendel.
You don't put them in
who's
danger.
There, she
You
would have
don't
been
put them in
fine if
danger.
it had been 2 on, but it wasn't 2 on.
No, but I mean, like, I agree that he's really good about plans and plans and plans, but to me, Sammael comes off as more as like the guy that he appears very skilled in their planning and their tactics, but like Matt does, whereas Matt has all this experience of generals, but Matt seems to always fall into a good plan until he kind of like gets comfortable with his memories and that kind of stuff. He falls into a good position, falls into good memories. It feels like Sammael is trying to roll the same kind of luck dice by doing plan after plan after plan after plan. Like, hey, if I'm confused and my people are confused, everybody will be confused. And he's like, just plans on, hey, how do I solve a problem? Oh, here's another onion layer to my Shrek plan.
Where
they're
I had a
all,
problem, I would just
they're
throw
all
a
relatively,
Molotov
like-
cocktail at it, and boom,
Yeah.
new problem.
Yeah, where they're all like relatively like half-ass plans, like with half-ass goals. Like Sammael seems like, so in the very beginning, he's very much set on this wanting to destroy Rand. Like all the other Forsaken, for his own reasons, for his own thirst for power, for his own whatever. Because only one Forsaken in the entirety of the Age of Legends and the Third Age realizes that if they actually fucking win and do what their master wants, only one of them gets what they want, and the rest of them all get fucked. But I don't know how they. Well, I do know how they don't realize that. They're too busy infighting and doing other weird shit with people, like pleasuring them to death. But Sammael's plans, like this, like with the shadow, like Shido.
You gotta
really
go.
feel it.
Like,
Yeah.
there are worse
with
ways
the-
to go.
With the Shido, it's like
Tied
to
up
me,
under
it just-
a bed by a golem.
yeah, maybe I'm
Literal
just stuck in
combat.
like this kind of like viewing Sammael as like this kind of like jockey asshole mentality, the kind of biased jockey asshole mentality. But it feels more to me like the person in high school that spreads a rumor that like the hot cheerleader that turned them down actually has gonorrhea. Like, if I can, like if I can't defeat you,
No.
then no one can.
That is
Like-
apt. That is an apt description.
Because yeah, there are speed bumps, but other than like his reputation with the rest of the Westlands, Rand doesn't have that much of a problem dealing with the Shido doing their shit. And mainly a lot of the time it comes down to educating the rulers that like, no, the Shido are honorless random bands of brigands essentially that have abandoned the honor of the IOA, and the ones that actually follow me are the
Dragon
IO.
Sworn. Man, it certainly looks like a lot of your followers or people who say they follow you are a bunch of brigands throughout the country.
Well, I will
That
say
that
this.
that was Massima's
No,
dragons.
I know. All right.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna
but
hop
it's
in
kind of the
here.
same thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop in here and start with my final thoughts, and then I'll pass it over to Village with sort of this, because I think this is a good transition into that. Because I like the idea of the fact that we see Sammael a little differently. Because when it comes right down to it, I don't disagree with you, Andrew. I do actually think that he's a lot of the high school bully. And, Village Mattress has made a very, very good point of when you're just really starting out being war torn and it's not an established thing for you, people who are strategists in other areas start to look real good at what they do when lives are on the line. And so honestly, like, what do we know about Sammael as a general in the War of the Light, the War of the Shadow? Well, he's a defensive sportsman who is lauded for his defensive abilities. And we seem to think that he knows, or that he tries to think multiple moves ahead of his opponents and has all of these machinations. That looks like a really good general. It does. And if it works for you to lose,
or an enigma.
and if it looks like you're actually saving any amount of people, people are going to think that you're good at what you do. But in the end, it's not other people that necessarily think that Sammael is the greatest general of their time. It's Sammael. He is the one who stands there and goes, you gave forces of the light to Lews Therin. I'm mad about that because I think I'm better than he is.
The greatest tactician
right?
ever.
And so, he's standing there going ahead and seemingly giving us the information that he thinks he's better than Lews Therin. Do other people think that? We don't actually really know. He might just be being an egotistical dick. Entirely possible. And then what does he do when he comes back? He takes over a city and then he defends it to the end. And by to the end, I mean he retreats, but he sets up a good defense plan. And also, his hands are a little tied, just like all of the other Forsaken, because by the time he actually makes his truce with Rand, the Dark One has basically said, hey, don't kill Rand. He's mine. So Sammael is standing there with this handicap that he's been told by his lord and master that he can't do this thing. And so he goes back to his roots. He makes a truce with the devil that he doesn't know. I mean, he's already got a truce with the devil that he does. And he, tries to go ahead and defend his city and sets himself up to be whatever. And the Shido are a problem for everybody. So I think that him scattering the Shido is actually just, it's not a I'll speed bump all of these lands. He makes Rand look bad and he makes sure that the Shido don't come to Ilion next. I think it's totally self-preservation. And so, I think that he does not do a great job. I think that along with a number of other people who decided that he was not the right general to lead the forces of the light, I agree with them. I think that he's not actually as good as he thinks he is. But he's also not garbage. And I agree with Josh that his machinations aren't necessarily ridiculous. But I do also like that Robert Jordan puts in things that are anticlimactic, because life is sometimes anticlimactic. You can absolutely have the greatest possible play in the Super Bowl. And if one defensive end is in the right place at the right time to intercept your amazing throw, you look like a moron. It just happens that way sometimes. And again, I'm not saying that that's always what Sammael did. Some of his machinations weren't brilliant. But I also appreciate that Robert Jordan also goes, some of the things that he was doing are actually smart, and he gets information and he gets a city and he does these things. And then Rand comes in and is a Taviran and is lucky and knows Balefire. And he basically walks up to Sammael and goes, cool machinations, bro. It would suck if Mashadar killed you. Like,
Balefire.
I love the part where it's like,
Balefire.
oh, I'm lucky and I'm Taviran, and when that doesn't work, erase history.
yeah, no, exactly. And so, like, again, let me be very, very clear. I don't think Sammael's as cool as he thinks he is. I don't even think Sammael's as cool as other people gave him credit for when he was, in the War of the Shadow originally. But I also don't think he's garbage. There are other Forsaken who are absolutely more garbage. That being said, last final thought. If your reason for going over to the Shadow is because you don't like being second to someone, huge middle finger to you and all that you stand for. And that's my final thought on Sammael. Chris, what are your final thoughts on Sammael?
I think Sammael does a lot for the story, more than most of the other Forsaken. I mean, there's a few that do as much or slightly more, but he's top 3 or 4 as far as how much he influences the game board, so to speak. And so I got, that's again the anticlimactic ending is somewhat disappointing, but like you said, that sometimes things are anticlimactic. You can't always come in with all the drama that Demon Dread shows in the final book. So, but there's a lot more going on with him than there is with most of the other Forsaken.
I was going to say, then again, you also have to have Demandred not exist for most of the books to have his dramatic entrance be that dramatic.
Yeah. Yes. So,
but continue. Sorry.
But yeah, I think he's a fantastic part of the story, and he makes a lot of things, a lot of the plots lines happen. I mean, he takes over Perrin's arc for a big portion of the story, and Matt is marching down with an army, and that takes the better part of the book before Ren sends him to Saladar, and so there's a lot of things revolve around what Sammael is doing, and I think he's integral to the story, and a really good portion of it. So those
Nice.
are my thoughts.
I like those thoughts. Those are good thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, you want to go, or shall I take this one next?
I'll go because I feel like mine are relatively bland.
Oh, that's not true.
No, I mean, because it's not too different from what I've already said. I think that Sammael is one of those characters that puts his hands in many different, very shallow cookie jars, where he's involved in a bunch of different places. He is a player in a bunch of different places, but I never really saw him or viewed him, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but and then this is also in comparison to the other Forsaken, never really saw him as that super significant as an obstacle, any more so than any other Forsaken could be. I don't think I think his late blossom into being able to channel, that was this battle tested and suddenly brought about ability to channel, and the breadth of that is what let him stand out. I think Grendel kind of helped nudge him into getting into the realm of the Forsaken. I don't think he had the experience. I don't think he had the tactics. I think you definitely had the mindset. But I don't think anything about Sammael's mindset is especially notably advanced or spectacular. I think it's a relatively average mindset. that still it does play a big part in the story. But I think when it comes into like his interactions with like being an adversary for Rand and being an adversary for Matt and being an adversary for Perrin, that for a while there he plays the part of the filler villain, where we need somebody to prod this direction or that direction or this direction or give a motive for this and that to happen. And I feel like Sammael fills it. I feel like he just doesn't quite ever, in the time that we're reading, rise to a threat level that I feel many, not all, but many of the other Forsaken do. And I never really felt like Sammael was really like, oh, he could turn the tide for the shadow ending threat. And I think his biggest, most shocking moment is a blind throw of a lightning bolt that gets undone anyway. So, do I like him? Yeah, I think he's a good villain because he's a versatile villain that does give a motive to several characters for several events and does help further several plot lines. But I'm also not a big fan of characters that seem to over 50% exist to help further plot lines. And I feel like had we replaced Sammael with another Forsaken with a more direct and hard set goal, that I would have liked them more than I would have liked Sammael being in charge of Ilion. So it's just not my favorite. Not my favorite by a fair shot.
Out of curiosity, did you just give Sammael credit for something Ravine did?
Yeah, you're right, and take that away.
Okay, I just
like,
want to make sure.
It's
not a
the
big
biggest
deal.
shocking.
That only further proves his point.
No, exactly. That's why I kind of like let it stand, because I mean, in the end, that actually just makes you more right to your final thoughts. I was just like, wow, he doesn't even do that, does he? Like,
yeah,
it's
my bad.
No, you're all good.
Oh,
you're all good.
Time to start this next reread.
Yeah, that's right. By the way, I'm in book 2 of my reread. If you want to follow along with my thoughts, go to Twitter and just follow the hashtag WattReread. I've got my thoughts organized under that hashtag WattReread. Go ahead and check that
Josh
out.
just said his thoughts and organized in a sentence.
It's awesome, right? It's awesome. That's how I get them. They're like, whoa, wait. He was organized? I got to check this out. Nope, I'm not. But now you're hooked. Much like the taint on Sidene. You can't let it go. That's right. I'm gonna double down on my theory that Sammael is a character archetype of a military officer who went to college and played football at West Point and was lauded as this person who was so smart, who did all the right things. He got straight A's. He was a straight A student. But when it came down to real world experience, is someone who spent all their time doing what they like to do and not what needs to be done. And that's a very important distinction, because you will find that 100% of successful people in this world do things that they do not want to do on a daily basis. There are days you wake up and damn, you just don't wanna. And guess what? You don't have to. However, if you want to be successful, if you want to succeed, if you want to progress in life, if you want to improve your situation, you have to do the things that you don't want to do sometimes. It's just a fact of life. And Sammael is one of these who has sort of an inherent talent or an inherent ability and is able to focus on things he enjoys doing, which is great. Anybody who can dedicate themselves to what they enjoy doing will excel at that thing. But if you want to have a whole person success, you must learn to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. In Sammael's case, he needs to have learned how to manage supply chain and different things for the actual people living in his territory, so they weren't starving. As a result, when Rand came in and took the Crown of Swords, it was like almost instantaneous. And he had a vast majority of the nation's loyalty because he liberated them. And that's just
What do
how
you
it
mean
is.
my
And those are
troops
my
need
points.
oil? What?
Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for
What do
tuning
you
in.
mean a 40-mile convoy is frozen?
Thanks so much to our special guest, Chris, also known as Village Mattress. You've seen him in numerous live streams all over the place, and he's a super cool guy to get to hang out with and talk to. So if you see him around at JordanCon or WattCon, or maybe, fingers crossed, maybe one of these days Gathering Madness, go ahead and say hi to him, and I'm gonna get a website link from him. I'm gonna put it in the description below. And if you need a new mattress or any other of the products that can be shipped, go to your man Chris at the Village Mattress, because that's just how it is. Thank you, sir, for being here. We really do appreciate you. Thank you all for listening. Thanks so much for being awesome. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Black Tower Podcast. We want to see you at WattCon. We want to see you at the Gathering Madness. Go to blacktowerpod.com. We want to see you. You know what? Share a picture of you wearing some sweet BTP merch or drinking out of some sweet BTP merch. And we'll put you on blast.
BTB.
We'll show everybody. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. We're going to love it.
If you don't have any,
everything's awesome.
blacktowerpod.com. Go get some. Do it now.
Go get some.
Do
Do
some.
it now.
Give
And,
us
thanks for being here.
Spreadshirt and or New Creations by Jen your money.
That's right. That's right. Thanks for being awesome during when we dispense this week's dose of madness. We thank you for being here. We thank you for being awesome. And we hope that wherever you are, you're just a little bit more insane than you were when you first started listening. From all of us here at the Black Tower, I am your Sorvan Mahale Josh, also known as the Kill It Mahale.
Kill it with fire.
I feel like it didn't have much life left, so I feel like killing it was more like mercy and mess than anything else.
Blood and bloody ashes.
I am Andrew, your Bison Mahale, also known as the Disappear Mahale.
And I
can't see
am
my hand.
And I am Daniel, also known as your Amin Khan Mahale, the one you can hear and see coming from miles away because he doesn't shut up. And from all of us here at the Black
C-O-M or
Tower
C-U-M,
Podcast,
the world may never know.
thank you very much again, Village Mattress, for joining us.
Thank you.
We had a great discussion. I hope that we will have you back at some point. And seriously, if you need a mattress, go get you one. But from all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. We hope that you have a lovely morning. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, good night.
Always running the show.
In the tower, you can bring your pain. In the tower, you can feel the strain.
You've been having so much trouble just fitting in.